While I am a bit embarrassed to show you one of my very first landscape paintings, I'm showing you this to encourage you that you can start with little to no talent and you can learn basic principles, you can practice them and start applying them, and you can end up with a painting like this one that I did yesterday. I've got 20 tips to share with you, things that I did that you can learn to do that I applied in that painting to make sure it didn't look like that first painting. I'd love for you to stay tuned and check out these ideas. The first suggestion that was so key for me is not making things up in my head, but actually using a photo or painting from life to make sure I had some type of reference. The second suggestion that I would make is get a drawing in. You can use pencil or you can use paint, but make sure you get that drawing in. That's the roadmap for where you're going. If you don't have a roadmap, you're probably going to get lost. Number 3, don't put the horizon smack in the middle of your canvas, or for that matter, any object of interest. In our newer painting, I lowered that horizon line, giving the sky more room to be magnificent. Hey, if you're finding this video useful, would you take a second and give it a thumbs up and subscribe? Thank you. Number 4, the sky color and transition, or lack thereof, was a big problem with this first painting. Notice that the color itself doesn't look very realistic, and it's one solid color from the top of the sky to the horizon. Typically, in a real life situation, the sky is going to be darker at the top and it's gradually going to get lighter as it goes down. It can even turn a little turquoisey at the horizon. Not only can you have a transition in sky color from top to bottom, but also right to left. If you want to show a storm or emphasize where the light source is coming from, you can make one side of the painting lighter than another. On this painting, the right side was much lighter than the left. Nice transitions from top to bottom and from left to right. Number 5, the clouds are so boring and the perspective is wrong. If you haven't seen my video on Painting Skies and Clouds 101, the number one mistake that artists make, I really encourage you to check out that video. I'm going to put it at the end of this video, and it will show you how to put clouds in with the proper perspective. I didn't know anything about that when I started painting, and it shows. Number 6, the clouds are flat. You've got to have multiple values. These clouds are so flat they look like they were cut out of a sheet of paper and put on the canvas. They're so flat, I've turned the painting upside down and they still look the same. Clouds are multi-dimensional. They have height, they have breadth, they need to have variations in color and lights and darks to read correctly. Which leads us to number 7, pre-mixing your colors. I find this true with landscape and particularly with my clouds. If I'll pre-mix my colors, I know where I'm going and my paintings just end up being better. Which leads me to number 8, using a minimum of 3 values with the clouds. If you will have at least a light, a dark, and a middle value for your clouds, you're going to find they're going to read a lot more realistic and have more volume. A big mistake that I made in that original painting was my tendency to use little bitty brushes. And I think every artist struggles with that when they're beginning, because you feel like the smaller the brush, the more control. But I have found if I will go up 2, 3, 4 times the size in the brushes, the painting gets that much better. It makes a significant difference. Number 10, when I started painting, I didn't know anything about mixing colors, so I bought a tube of any color I thought I might like. And from this first painting, I suspect I was using Hooker's green right out of the tube, and particularly greens, if they're not neutralized by adding a little bit of the complement, which is red, they can look very harsh and very amateurish. Compare it to my later painting where the colors were more neutralized, the greens were a little softer, and looked much more realistic. I can't tell you how important instruction is, because the bottom line is you don't know what you don't know. YouTube is a fantastic resource for free art videos, including my channel, which I hope you've subscribed to. I also invested in several fairly expensive courses that I felt would be beneficial to my goal. And I also have purchased dozens and dozens of art books. I bought most of them online at used bookstores. They were pretty inexpensive, but they're great for inspiration and teaching and just getting those juices flowing. Instruction is key. Another problem I had when I started painting was I used way too many colors. I put out 25 colors on my palette and my painting just was a mess, and I didn't understand what was wrong with it. If you've not seen my video on using a mother color, I'm going to attach it also at the end of this video. In it, I will show you how to build a painting using a limited palette, using the same one or two colors over and over, regardless of what you're painting. And at the end, you just have this beautiful painting with great color harmony. People may not even realize what's so good about it, but using the mother color is key. I encourage you to check that out. A good painting will always keep the viewer in mind. Where do you want to draw their eye, and what is the focal point? There was no focal point in the original painting, perhaps the end of the road, but almost every area in that painting had the same square footage and impact. In our recent painting, however, the clouds have been given center stage, intentionally dramatized, and certainly the focal point. A really big mistake that I made in that first painting that really killed it is the foreground looked exactly the same as the back of the field. The same amount of texture, the same amount of detail, so there was no depth perception. Now let's compare it with this painting. I very intentionally used larger brushes at the front of the painting where I was putting in those grasses so you could be sure and see the texture and see the flowers. Notice in the back of the field, it looks very smooth. You don't see any texture at all. It gives you a great sense of depth. Even with the little fence posts running alongside the road, you'll notice that they're larger, they get smaller at the back, and then at the very back, they completely disappear. Again, it gives you a great sense of depth. Now, in our recent painting, look at the detail in the brushwork that's at the front of the painting, and the grasses are darker. As they go back in the painting, it gets flatter, less detail, it gets lighter and bluer. Let's face it, the road in that first painting was really, really bad. It looks like a tree. It looks like a piece of wood to me. And it was such a featured part of that painting, and to look so bad. Contrast it with this other landscape painting, which also had a road that was pretty predominant. I put layers of color on that road. I think the dotted line adds some interest. I was sure to do shading along the side of the road. And then let's look at our last painting. That road is subtle. It looks like dirt. The color varies a lot, and it's partially hidden and it's put over to the side. So if you don't want the road to be the focal point, do something more subtle with it. If you do want it to be a focal point, make sure that it's right and that it's interesting. Another great problem with that painting was that the whole painting lacked depth perception, not just the field. So if you'll notice the hills behind the field, the same color pretty much as the field, you'll notice that the clouds don't look like one is noticeably closer to you than another. So let's look at this next painting. Look at number one, that circle on the bottom left. You'll notice that there's a forest of trees, and then number two, where the trees get smaller as they go into the distance. Number three is a hill where you don't see the texture of the trees, but just there is some green there. The hill behind it, number four, the green and the yellow drop out and it becomes a bluey purple. And then look at number five in the distance. It becomes much lighter. It's still in the blue purple family, but it becomes much paler. So not only can you use scale to get, and texture and becoming more flat to get good depth perception, but color is also very important. Now let's look at how I incorporated those in the recent painting. You can see in our recent painting at the back of the field, the yellow and the green have dropped out, and we have blues and purples, which really makes you feel like that painting goes way in the distance. The texture in the field is very flat at the back, and it gets more textured at the front. One of the things that I had the most difficulty when I started painting were my clouds. And it was one of the things I wanted to paint well, but they were flat and uninteresting. But after some practice, wow, clouds have become one of my very favorite things as part of my landscape. Occasionally I'll put in a calm sky, but usually, because I can get so much drama with clouds, I frequently incorporate that into my landscape paintings, and I practice with it. In this example, I took a canvas, split it with masking tape, and just tried some different types of clouds using the same color palette over and over. Practice makes perfect, and looking at a good reference photo, I've got a great video on my website about clouds. I've got free videos on my YouTube channel about clouds. Be sure and check those out. While I attempted to add a little pink in my first painting to make the clouds a little more interesting, it was not very effective. I do have on my YouTube channel a whole video about how to add color to your cloud shadows. It's a free video. I'll put a link in the description box below. Here's an example of how I took the same lavender that's in the field and put it up in the clouds. Here I've actually added a touch of orange to those clouds to give it a nice glow. And in our most recent painting, I used Naples yellow and a touch of cad yellow to make those clouds glow. Number 19, another significant difference between my beginning painting and my ending painting is I did the first one in acrylic and I did the second one in oils. And while I'm still a great fan of acrylics, there are just things that you can do with oil paint that the blending properties, particularly with clouds, they just blend like butter. If you've never tried oils, I really encourage you to do it. An alternative is to get a slow dry medium, and I will often add that to my acrylic paints to slow down that drying time so that you can get those nice transitions when you're trying to do something soft like clouds. Even that field, it was so easy with oil paints to go in there and get those soft transitions. So if you're a acrylic advocate, I'm there with you. I probably paint 3/4 the time in acrylics and 1/4 the time in oils, but I do like to add a slow dry medium to my acrylics. It just makes a huge difference, and I encourage you to try that. As valuable as instructional videos and art books can be, and as important as it is to learn basic principles when painting, I could never have arrived from here to there without God. Some of you may have heard my testimony. It was right after both of my parents died. God just birthed this burning desire in my heart to paint. And as you've seen, that birth did not come with any natural talent. But it did begin the habit of including God in every aspect of this painting journey. I talk to him as I would an art teacher. I ask him what I'm to paint, what size canvas, what type of paint. And I can't tell you how many times I've run into a problem with the painting and I've asked God, what's wrong with this? And usually pretty quickly, a brand new idea will just pop into my head and it's the perfect solution. If you've never included God in the painting process, I really encourage you to try him out. He can take you places you can't go on your own, and he is the master artist. He can bring out of you the fullness of what he put into you. So the next two videos that are coming up are the one about how to not make that big mistake when you're putting in clouds to get the right perspective. And the other is about the mother color. So if you haven't seen those videos, I really encourage you to check them out. Coming up next, all kinds of free things at my website and at my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. God bless.